Circles is your usual suspects. I will come back to yet another live broadcast on your favorite football updates channel. It's a pleasure to be back. It's been a beautiful, long Monday. And yeah, we're good to be back for yet another conversation on everything football updates from Footballtribe UG. It's 13 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. that I'm joining you right now, live from Kampala, Uganda, on this beautiful Monday night. So, plenty to discuss. So many surprises in the transfer market, as well as a beautiful result there for the Uganda Cranes in the African Nations Championship that we did witness at Namboole Stadium, as the Cranes did beat up against Niger by 2 goals to 0 on the night. So, we'll be speaking about that and perhaps a little more. So, anyways, we will see. We will see. We will see. But that's part of what we're going to be discussing tonight, including Manchester City's exploits in this transfer window. We'll look at what the surprise move for Tottenham Hotspur, and then we'll get to discuss also some of the expectations. I did give earlier on my predictions for the upcoming Premier League season. I did give my predictions for the upcoming season. So we'll get to revisit that in a bit, just to, give you an insight on what it is that you should be looking out for in that video when you get to watch it. For those of you that have already watched it, thank you so much. I did see people like Shumail, as well as who else? There's somebody else who I'm forgetting. It should be the their name. Sorry, apologies. Just getting our audience listed. And their name does elude me at the moment. But yeah, they were part of that a video when it was premiering. I was seeing their comments, and unfortunately for them, they thought it was a live episode. They thought I'd come live, but it was a video premiere. It was just a video premiere there. But for those of you that have already managed to watch it, thank you so much for sparing the time to watch it. Unfortunately, you've yet to give me your feedback about what your thoughts are on that particular video. Perhaps, you're yet to give me what your thoughts are on that particular video. But I did make my assessment in regards to the Premier League table, where I do think the different teams will finish come the 2025-2026 season. I also want to say thank you so much to all our new subscribers, those that have recently supported. Thank you so much, Nayad. You are part of our morning broadcast. You did make it worthwhile among every single one of you that were also managed to be part of it. It was a pleasure seeing you guys around. Although I do not think you did subscribe. Yes, the other person that was part of that video was JFFTBL1. Yes, that's with Shumai. They were the people that were on that video as it premiered. And unfortunately for them, they thought it was a live broadcast, but it was just a video premiere, and that's why I was unable to engage them directly. But it's all good. It's all good. So thank you so much for the recent love and support. It's been well, appreciated. So tonight we'll be looking at the Uganda Cranes after their exploits today in the CHAN, that's the African Nations Championships. We'll look at Crystal Palace. They're losing their appeal at the Court of Arbitration for Sport. Manchester City are targeting a Real Madrid star in Rodrygo. We'll discuss Spurs are wanting Savinho, and then Nottingham Forest's a push for James McAtee. Everton are landing themselves Jack Grealish and things like that. I will be assessing all that news. Rodrygo the GOAT, good to have you on the broadcast. It is always a pleasure to see you around. How are you doing, my brother? Any exclusive for us from the Real Madrid world? I did see some pictures of Rodrygo Goes training there. I think he was with David Alaba and says, work. I think it was, I think a tweet on X, something like that. Rodrygo has 10 chance to Manchester City. The player has decided to stay. Okay, if that's the case. But again, sometimes players decide to stay and yet their clubs decide to sell, and it goes on until very late on in the summer. You remember when Mesut Ozil joined Arsenal in 2013? It's not like Real Madrid wanted really wanted to sell him, but it was to aid their pursuit for Gareth Bale. So yeah, FTBL edits, good to have you on the broadcast. Not Will. Rodrygo will go end City. I didn't catch that precisely. You mean Rodrygo will go to Manchester City? Anyways, we'll look at that in just a bit. But enlarge me. For those of you that are just joining us, my name is Robert, and I'm coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda. It's about 18 minutes past the hour of 11 p.m. East Africa time. If you're new to the channel, kindly consider subscribing to the channel and help me on my journey to 2,000 subscribers. And also, kindly like the podcast as well. Do let me know where you're joining us from on this particular Monday night, and I'll be reading every single one of your comments as they do come through. Riyadh, hi Riyadh. Riyadh does join us once again. Riyadh in recent times has become one of our, sort of usual suspects, and I hope it continues that way. What striker should Spurs buy? I'll answer that question in a bit, but again, it depends on who are they already looking at. It's not to say that they do not have strikers, but I know for a fact that Yohan Wissa is one of their targets, although they've yet to make a bid for him. Anyways, let's kick things off with the Uganda Cranes, because they did beat up against Niger by 2-0. Alan Okello had to, how do I explain this? He scored a penalty with the header. I know it won't make sense, but anyways, his penalty attempt was saved by the goalkeeper, but he managed to, pounce quickly on the rebound and head that ball into the back of the net to give Uganda Cranes the 1-0 lead. And then the other was, I think, Joel Serunjoji there in the 56th minute scored another brilliant goal, with Alan Okello providing the assist as Uganda Cranes steered themselves to a 2-0 victory. That's back-to-back wins after having beaten up against Guinea by 3-0, which was a recovery from their earlier loss to Algeria by 3-0 in the opening fixture of the Africa Nations Championship. So that's the result. Then in the other earlier game that did happen still, South Africa did beat up against Guinea by 2-1. So that's the update today from the African Nations Championships. That was Group C, where Uganda do lead with a tally of 6 points. Algeria, South Africa do follow subsequently with 4 points, while Guinea have 3 points and Niger have 0 points. Uganda need to ensure that they do win their game against South Africa, and next week, I think probably on Friday, which will be their final game of Group C, to ensure that they do advance to the next round of the competition. They are trying to replicate what the rest of the East African host nations are trying to do in Kenya and Tanzania, who have been quite impressive in the tournament so far, with Tanzania remaining unbeaten, as well as Kenya leading Group A with 7 points after 2 victories and 1 draw, while Tanzania have won all 3 of their opening fixtures. So while Kenya, by the way, en route to that, they did beat 2-time champions in Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as Morocco, who did win the tournament twice. Quickly, let me now turn my attention to your questions. You say Wissa is good. I like Mateta. Okay, Joan Philippe Mateta is a bit of a late developer. He's a striker that we've spoken about almost all summer in different phases. In regards to reported interest, there were some rumors which were wide of the mark at the time that were linking the potential move to Liverpool, and I did say I did not see any truthfulness to that. In the last 2 Premier League seasons, he scored a total of 30 goals, including 14 coming in last season and 16 coming the season before that. He can be a reliable character, but Oliver Glasner is the one that has shown us that he can be that. Otherwise, he wasn't thriving during Roy Hodgson's time, and then when you look far back to Patrick Vieira's time, before he was shown the exit, and then Roy Hodgson came in as an interim, and he served his own spell until February 2024, when Oliver Glasner did leave the club. Testers of life, how is it, my man? It's all good, at least for now. Good to have you join us on the broadcast. Congratulations, testers, for your victory, for South Africa's victory against Guinea. They are winning the game by 2-1. So you do say you appreciate Joan Philippe Mateta. I think there's a host of clubs that do appreciate him in that sense. In any case, I do not think Crystal Palace is a player they would want to lose, because again, you do not want way too many changes, especially with the anticipation that they could lose that they could lose McKay, that they could lose Eberechi Eze before the end of the transfer window. But anyway, we can never say never. Although, yeah, there is a good player in there, but I've not seen any links linking him with the potential move to Tottenham Hotspur. But at least I've seen links of Yohan Wissa's interest partly because of the history with Thomas Frank, the new manager at Tottenham Hotspur, who knows Yohan Wissa a little too well. Reports have suggested that Yohan Wissa would prefer a move to Newcastle, attracted by the possibility of UEFA Champions League football and things like that. But there's also been some interest from the Saudi Pro League when it comes to Yohan Wissa. When you say, somebody said FTBL said Rodrygo will go and end up at City. Well, I mean, nothing is guaranteed at this stage in time. I see we have Will. Hi, Will. Good to have you on the broadcast. How was your Monday? It's been a bit of a tiring one, a bit of a long one, but that's the nature of life. But it's also been very fruitful, bearing in mind that Uganda Cranes are close to that 2-0 victory, which perhaps gives us a bit of hope that maybe perhaps for the first time in the history of the competition, that's the African Nations Championship, since its inception in 2009, we will get to perhaps advance beyond the group stages. But it remains to be seen. It remains to be seen. So it was a blue Monday. If you define it as such, then it definitely was. Then also quickly, like I said, let's turn our attention to Rodrygo Goes. Now, again, this Rodrygo Goes news linking him with the move to Manchester City did come as a bit of a surprise to me. Not that Man City are interested in him, because again, the rumors have been there for about dating to as far back as 3 weeks ago or so. However, again, you know the kind of news that sort of gets under the radar. For example, if you're flipping through a newspaper, it's neither on the front 4 pages, nor is it on the last 4 pages. That kind of news, that it's in the middle there, almost buried within the fine print. So there were subtle links, linking Rodrygo Goes with the potential move to Manchester City, but they did not come much to the forefront until today, when Fabrizio Romano did report that Manchester City are considering a move for Rodrygo after imminent exits. Jack Grealish is gone. We know that he's joining Everton. Then James McAtee is on his way to Nottingham Forest if nothing changes. And then we did have a surprise when it was reported that Tottenham Hotspur are engaged with Manchester City over a deal for Savinho. And the reason that's why it was a bit of a surprise for me, because ever since he joined from Girona, I do not think he's lived to the hype and expectations that he did come with, Savinho. And so I look at him and I'm wondering, unless of course, that Thomas Frank is convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he is the perfect replacement, perhaps for Son, and maybe he thinks he can get the best out of him. It was a bit of a surprise for me, if I'm being honest, really. But it is true that Tottenham Hotspur are interested in signing Savinho from Manchester City. It is reported that Manchester City want about 50 million euros plus. Let's wait and see if that deal will come to fruition. But yeah, Manchester City, given the expectation of those that could depart the club, they would want to replace some figures within the club ranks. So again, that exclusive did come from Matteo Moreto, who did say Tottenham open club talks to sign Savinho from Manchester City. Negotiations ongoing between Spurs and Man City. Also understand Savinho's open to the move if the clubs can agree on a fee. Tottenham boss Thomas Frank indicated Savinho is an ideal player. So, and then we were right from that, we were then teleported literally to the news of Manchester City's interest in Rodrygo Goes. Do you think Pep Guardiola has got a plan up his sleeves to win the Premier League this season? I mean, any manager that has ever won it, and any manager that looks to win it, always has a plan. Whether that plan works out, that's a whole different story. But I mean, he does have one, and that's But also, I think it does understand, pretty much like the rest of the world, that Manchester City are currently going through a rebuild. They're going through that bit of transition, are going away from the old guard and into this new crop of players that include the Jeremy Dokus, that do include the Savinhos, Tijani Reenders, Victor Reis, who has gone on to Girona. Hi, Pedri. Good to have you on the broadcast. So they do. You look at that cohort of players. Of course, Ryan Cheki, Ryan Achnori. You look at, even though some have won the Premier League title before, that was the 2023-2024 season, the Josh Covadiols of this world. Again, that's the fresh team that they are building on, with the mixture of the old guard, with the likes of Ruben Diaz, whose contract they agreed to extend for another until June 2028. I know for a fact that they are in negotiations with Rodrygo to extend his contract, despite him having suffered that injury setback. Then, so you still have the experience of Bernardo Silva, Ilkay Gundogan is still around, Ederson Moraes is still around, Phil Foden is still around, but also given his age, so he's part of that, project. Then the Omar Mamush of this world, Nico Gonzalez, those are the new players within those worlds that you ask. Okay, you're asking an update on the Football Fantasy League. Yeah. I was actually looking into that. In fact, my page is still open for the Fantasy League. Although, when I was on the site, it appeared that it does necessitate me to have the app, which I get to download. And suddenly, I remember I had a Zoom call, which took me away from all that. But I'm really looking into that, working on it in regards to the FPL. You talk about will Tijani Reenders start a lot? Yeah, I do think he will start a lot of games. He's looked good so far, based on what I've seen. Of course, he has a lot of acclimatization to get to, but yeah, I think he will get to start a lot of games. So Man City are within that period of transition, and the reason as why Pep Guardiola will try to win the Premier League, it's also to live to the expectations of the measure of his own standards, because he's set those standards that at least he is a winner, and he's won the Premier League title on 6 different occasions for as long as he's been at Manchester City. I think you have to go back to 2020 when Liverpool won it, and then in his debut campaign 2016, 2017 when Chelsea won it under Antonio Conte, and then of course last season when Liverpool won it. The only 3 times that he's missed out on winning it. Otherwise, he's won it on the other 6 occasions. So it's his expectation is to try and win it. Whether he can actually go on to win it is a whole different story. Because personally, while I think they will contend for the title, I do not think they will win it eventually. On that, speaking of, again, the title contention, I've published my Premier League season predictions. It's a bit of a fairly lengthy video, only 45 minutes, which you can listen into and hear my thoughts about that. I do give my submission on what I do expect the Premier League table to look like at the end of the season. I do mention that it does factor in the fact that the transfer window is open, and that player exits or recruitments could change our perceptions about certain teams and how they may cope with, but the general picture of the table does not change, in my view, in the way I've predicted it. So many people predicting or think Liverpool are favorites to win the Premier League title, and yeah, you ask who is you're asking for my top 4. If I give you my top 4 here, I'll be preempting you going on to watch the video. So I do suggest that you go and watch the video, and then you'll find out who my top 4 are, Pedri. So allow me make that humble request. So that I do not let the cat out of the bag here. But just know, Man City is one of them. Okay. Then quickly. So okay. All right, I've answered that. Dada, please talk about FPL updates. I've talked about that. Mamush, Foden, yeah, Omar Mamush. Now, Foden needs to sort of regain his form. The Foden we saw in 2023, 2024, we need to see a reincarnation of that Phil Foden. If Man City are also going to have a brilliant season. Otherwise, it's not looked pretty for him last season. I thought he struggled. Apparently, he had some issues on and off the pitch, things like that. But let's hope he will be a better player going into next season. Then you say, I think Rienders will probably look different than his time at Milan because he will most likely play as a deeper role for now at Manchester City after Rodrygo's knock. Let's not forget that they do have Mateo Kovacic, who can also play in that deep lying role. They do have Matthias Nunes, who can play in that deep lying role, although predominantly is a bit of an 8. They have Nico Gonzalez, who they signed from FC Porto in January, who is also deep lying 6. So again, it will all boil down to how Pep Guardiola sets up his team at the end of the day. But I think they have options before they turn to him to play that deep lying role in the 6 that you do allude to. Then you say, okay, I've responded about the top 4. The video doesn't open for me. What do you mean it doesn't open for you? What is that supposed to mean? It's a public video. It's not a private video. And like I was saying earlier on when it was premiering, I saw Shmail and and some other colleague of ours, what's his name, JF, on it, thinking that it was a live broadcast. So I don't want to lie to you. I do not know why that would be the case. But again, before Friday kicks off, when Liverpool play AFC Bournemouth, we would have revisited some of that. I thought when it comes to the top 4, I will look to have a wider debate on that with you guys here. But for now, I would recommend that those that have access, you first go watch the video, formulate your opinion, let me know what your thoughts are, and then we'll come back here and have a sort of an extended debate about the entire Premier League season as a whole, about the top 4, and then we'll also, Pedri, you will indulge us for your top 4. When it comes to the Spanish La Liga next season, I know, hinted on it a little bit when Testers of Life asked for my top 3 predictions across the top 5 leagues, in Europe, but we'll look to have a wider debate on that. Then before Anna Slot came to the Premier League to Liverpool and managed to win the league, do you think his signings he has a good choice, or could it make it more difficult for them this season? Now, first of all, when it comes to Anna Slot, last season he didn't. I'd want to believe he did not have pressure. Of course, the pressure came in at some point in the season when they started believing they could go on and win it. But I did not think. Remember, he was on a clean slate. First of all of us thought that maybe Jurgen Klopp's shoes would be a little too big for him to fill right from the onset, but he fit in like a glove and guided them to the Premier League title. To a huge surprise of many of us in those expectations, even though he was handling a team that the previous season had finished 3rd on the Premier League table with a tally of 82 points. Guess what? He only added 2 points to that tally to make it 84, and it won them the Premier League title. So in that context. So he did not have that sort of pressure in terms of the expectation. Now that he's won it, in his first season, and then they've added reinforcements, there's going to be a bit of a pressure. There's going to be a bit of expectation among the Liverpool fan base. Now, it's not to say it's going to be a do or die for him or a make or break, but in terms of Liverpool's reputation and, wanting to be dominant, both at home soil and away from home, it's going to come with a bit of pressure because now he's been injected with the sudden resources. When you look at last summer, they only brought in Federico Chiesa from Juventus, and then Georgi Mamadashvili stayed at Valencia and just trained. So given the kinds of additions they've made, and they look not to be done with the transfer window, and even if they were to say that they are done at this stage, again, those are significant additions, including the club's record signing. So he has to make it work. In other words, the message that they communicated in those additions is that you are brilliant last season. We want you to even be better this season. So that's the kind of message that you get with those additions. So when you look at all that, I feel that there's going to be a bit of pressure on him or on his shoulders in terms of expectations, both in terms of media scrutiny, as well as the Liverpool fan base and the overall football environment. That's my expectation around Arne Slot when it comes to the choices he's made. In terms of the players that they've recruited, I think those are very, very brilliant players. Florian Wirtz, one of the most sought after players. Bayern Munich wanted him, Man City wanted him. I think other teams would have loved to sign him, although he just turned out to be a little too expensive, perhaps, for their pockets. Milos Kakes, lots of teams were interested. Arguably the best left back in the Premier League last season for me. Jeremy Frimpong, the best right back that was probably in the German Bundesliga. So you look at all that, and then Hugo Ekitike, one of the best strikers there was in the German Bundesliga, and so you look at all those additions and you think to yourself that, it has to it has to come with a bit of pressure, and those are very, very good signings if they can, have a quick, start to life. And if the Community Shield was anything, it showed us that Milos Kakes is good, Jeremy Frimpong is good, Hugo Ekitike looked sharp, and things like that. Florian Wirtz providing that assist for Hugo Ekitike. Maybe they're not worried, but let's wait and see how maybe the first 10, 15 games of the season will look to shape Liverpool, because we will get to understand more of what they are made of and how he looks to set up his team more. Then the video does not open for me, so I can't access the answer. I keep pressing E on it and it doesn't open for me. I don't know why. Unfortunately, I wish I knew the answer to that, because when I attempt to open it on my end, it does open very well. And I don't know. Given that so far about 16 people have watched it, it tells me that others are able to open it. So I'm unfortunately, I can't explain to you why. Maybe I don't know. Try sort of refreshing your YouTube app or your browser, because it could be a result of cache, the channel having cached within your browser, something like that, which could be the challenge from an IT perspective, but I hope it will be good. Then you give us your top 4 Spanish La Liga predictions to say Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, and Real Betis. Do I differ from you? I gave mine in that order. Barcelona, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid. I think the fourth, no, initially your fourth was actually Villarreal. I remember having that conversation with you, but now you seem to have shifted to Real Betis, whatever the reasons are. But kindly indulge us. What are your reasons for thinking that Real Betis will rise to fourth, this season? Then Footballtribe Uganda, thank you. Man City want Rodrygo Silva the goals. Yes, again we'll discuss that because they've lost Jack Grealish, who has joined Everton on a season-long loan with an option to buy for about £50 million, according to us certain sources. They're losing Kim. They're losing James McAtee, who is on the verge of joining Nottingham Forest, because again that was built as an exclusive by Fabrizio Romano, said Nottingham Forest are closing in on James McAtee deal with Manchester City, agreement at the final stages for a fee in the excess of £20 million. Nottingham Forest confident to get it done, and here we go, expected soon. And then he came back to add more to say personal terms were already fully agreed. Then McAtee wants Nottingham Forest despite several requests. And by the way, we're talking about a player who had a trip to Eintracht Frankfurt in Germany for a tour around the city, around the club, ahead of what was a proposed move for him. But looks like that deal did not lead to any fruition. Now, because Manchester City are losing, they could lose Savinho to Tottenham Hotspur. You're losing Jack Grealish. You're losing James McAtee. Those are 3 players. It's only plausible or ideal that Manchester City find a replacement within their own ranks. So and Rodrygo Goes could be that player who, if a deal can be struck. Of course, the reported valuation is around the mark of 100 million euros, as well. And throughout the transfer window, that's the kind of figure we've been hearing. It's been oscillating between 90 million euros to 100 million euros, but let's wait and see. We know for a fact that Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, and some of the other teams that have been reported to have interest are within the same player. And then we've received multiple reports suggesting that the player does not want to leave Real Madrid this summer, that he would want to stay and fight for his place under Xabi Alonso. Now, again, I think the decision will be of the club to say, look, we just signed Franco Mastantuano, and we think, we still have Adagula that can play on that side of the pitch. Maybe we need to create a bit of room and things like that. So at the end of the day, it will be a decision of Florentino Perez to decide who gets moved on and who stays. Pedro, you say in justification, you say, I just think because of Villarreal having UEFA Champions League football, and I think they can make it into the top 24 easily, so that's European football until January. So half of the season, Betis have European football. Where did Betis finish last season? But there is a way easier. However, Villarreal, okay. You mean to say that of Real Betis is way easier? I think Real Betis, correct me if I'm wrong, did they not qualify for the UEFA Europa League? You add on to say Tottenham wants Savinho, Moreira de Oliveira. Yes, so that we've discussed. So again, a very, very beautiful, a good addition, by the way, for Everton to sign Jack Grealish. I mean, we're talking about Everton that has lost a good number of players in this transfer window, in terms, especially when it came to releases. They lost Neil Mope, they lost Abdoulaye Diakore, they lost Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Ashley Cole has left, Mason Holgate. Those are some of the players that have left the club. So indeed, they need the reinforcements. And getting Jack Grealish, he goes to a team where he's not going to be under huge pressure. It's slightly below the bracket of Aston Villa, so that means he can play freely. He can, position himself as the star of the team ahead of the likes of Ndiaye, in that team. So it's you have Thierno Barry, who is just joined from Real. He's yet to find his footing. You have Beto, who is not bad, but again, if somebody asks you who is the star of that Everton team, you could look at Jordan Pickford. You could mention maybe their captain, James Tarkowski, but when it comes to the forward positions, you may talk about I think James McNeil, and then Ndiaye, but again, they've not been that exceptional. So Jack Grealish could, if David Moyes can tactically fit him into his setup, he can go on to be a very, very good addition for them. Then you say, okay, yes, okay, you confirm that Real Betis are going to be playing in the UEFA Europa League. Barry, Keenan, Brisbane Hall, Ahmad, as you know, Jack Grealish. What a window for the Toffees. Yeah, and by the way, I think I predicted them to finish in the second half of the table. But again, it will depend on how they kickstart the season. They could surprise us and finish way higher than many of us have predicted them to finish. But those are very good additions. But usually, signing good players is one thing, but also getting them to play as a team is oftentimes another whole thing. For Jack Grealish, I have no doubt that he can step up and improve on what he's been able to deliver in the last 2 years at Manchester City. But yeah, you said 12 this season. That's your prediction. Where Everton do finish in this campaign. Is that what your suggestion is? Well, that was my suggestion as well, but we will see. We will see how they do fare. But yeah, those are very, very good additions. Keenan Brisbane Hall, very, very good at Leicester City. He did join Chelsea last summer for about £35 million. Has not quite found the ample playing time that he would have hoped to, get because Enzo Maresca took him as, I've already said this: a manager that leaves one club for another, usually there's that one player or two players that they would want to carry from the previous club. And for Enzo Maresca, that was Keenan Dewsbury Hall, so he went with him. Bearing in mind that Chelsea had also signed Wesley Fofana a couple of years back from the same side. So, but eventually it did not work out. Chelsea just had one too many players that he did struggle to get playing time. And given that next season they are in the UEFA Champions League and not the UEFA Conference League, the competition level gets a bit stiffer and things get a little bit more serious. So Enzo Maresca would want to have his best, starters, playing week in, week out, but also replacing them pound for pound if there's an issue or in terms of substitution with almost similar sort of, quality and like that. So anyway, I come back to add to say Villarreal, Chelsea, Manchester City, Bayern Munich. How about them? How about Villarreal, Chelsea, Manchester City? What are you trying to say about those teams? Douglas Luiz would be supernatural for Everton. Douglas Luiz is a player that has been linked with multiple clubs, especially in the Premier League. They have been reports linking him with the potential move to Liverpool. They've been reports linking him with the potential move to Nottingham Forest. Everton, what being one of those. I think Wolves were the other team. And then Tottenham Hotspurs were the other team again. So we are just waiting to see where his next destination will be. But there is a high expectation that he does leave at Juventus this summer after a very unsuccessful debut campaign after leaving Aston Villa the previous summer. Then you say, so if Everton were to get him, I think, yeah, that would be quite a brilliant sign. And again, they're going to have this new stadium feel about them. David Moyes is, return, and he did save them from relegation last season, which was good. And now they get to give him that sort of second go at things. We're talking about an Everton side that used to finish well within 8th, 7th, maybe as high as 6th or 5th sometimes, the kind of Everton that he had: Tim Cahill, Mikel Arteta, Leon Osman. You look at the South African player, Steven Pienaar, those kinds of Phil Jagielka. When you look at some of those players that did play for Everton, Tim Howard, just gone by, James Beattie. So you look at what's the Nigerian striker, Yakubu Ayegbene. So yeah, it was a bit of a strong team when you look back at some of those days. Of course, at the time, I think during that time, I do remember Martin O'Neill being at Aston Villa and things like that. Then you say, if they sign him, I think I will subscribe. Okay. What are your predictions for Liverpool players? Will Salah play better than Vitz and Ekitike? Will Isak sign? Is Liverpool's defense shaky? Liverpool's defense is not shaky, but it lacks the potential. It lacks potent backups. So, for example, you see, I've given the example of Chelsea, and Chelsea. It's not like Chelsea have the most of elite defenders, but when you look at majority of their defenders, they are well within the same kind of ranks. Today they will lose Levi Colwill, and Trevor Chalobah will come in, or Tosin Aderabio to play alongside any partner that may be chosen. Wesley Fofana, although injury prone, but when he's available, he can be a good defender. Axel Disasi, they want to move him on, but they have numbers. When it comes to numbers, they have Joel Hato, Levi Colwill, Wesley Fofana, Tosin Aderabio, Trevor Chalobah, Axel Disasi. Of course, they've loaned back Mamadou Sarr to Strasbourg, so we'll leave that one out. Then you see that they have numbers. When you compare, okay, let's go to Manchester United themselves. They have Harry Maguire, Matthias de Ligt, Lenny Yoro, Lisandro Martinez, Aiden Heaven, Nusa Mazoroui, Luke Shaw, because for them they play with the back three, so I'm counting him as a centre back, because sometimes it's been played as the left on the left side of the back three. So they have numbers. When we go to Arsenal, we know they have the numbers. But when you look at Liverpool, they look shy on numbers. They have Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahim Konate, Joe Gomez. I do not know any other Liverpool centre back. Yeah, Liverpool fans, do let me know if there's one that I've left out, because Wataru Endo is a midfielder who is now a makeshift centre back. Then Joel Kwesha has left for Bayer Leverkusen. So when you look at the numbers, they're really, really shy on numbers. If they can stay injury free across the entire campaign, then they'll have no problem competing. But yeah, the defense has some question marks. And when it comes to Alexander Isak, again, the Alexander Isak situation, multiple reports are suggesting that at the moment that Newcastle seem to have said no to Alexander Isak's move to Liverpool. And again, I think it's largely because of their struggles to find potent replacements in the transfer window. They missed out on Benjamin Sesko joining to Man United. They missed out on Hugo Ekitike, went to Liverpool. They missed out on Joao Pedro, went to Chelsea. They missed out on Brian Mbomo, went to Man United. So you can see that because they missed out on majority of their forward, attacking players that they did target in this transfer window. It would be almost the equivalent of insanity for Newcastle to sanction a deal when they failed with all those targets. Now, of course, there are still options within the market that they could look to sign, but I've also personally, I've always been of the view that regardless of who Liverpool sign for a striker, I do not think they should be letting go of Alexander Isak. They should stick to their guns and look to let him go at least the bare minimum next summer, because then you will have 2 years left for his contract. They can iron out a gentleman's argument to say, if a club comes in with this kind of offer around 110 million pounds, around 105 million pounds, then we'll let you go freely. Then that way they do not need to entertain contract renewal talks and things like that, because the player is held bent on leaving. Although the manner in which he's handled his situation in regards to seeking a move away has not been ideal. I mean, we knew that, for example, at Liverpool, Luis Diaz wanted to leave the club, but he did not behave in a manner that was unprofessional, in my opinion. Continued to train with the club. When it came to friendly games, he played professionally until when he was omitted from, a match day squad and things like that. But he did not request to, be left out of Liverpool's Asian tour, the way Alexander is active for Newcastle, and those kinds of things. So, as if to say, I do not want to risk getting injured while I am targeting a move away from the club. And I've always said that Newcastle are in a bit of a strong position when it comes to his contract. He's only entered the third last year of his current contract, and they can basically see out the transfer window, August the 31st, and he stayed. And then at the end of the day, we'll have to sit down and have an honest conversation with Ed Howe, as much as he hates what he's done. But he is the talisman of the team, and you will have to forgive him and reintegrate him with the rest of the squad and move on, if that's the situation that we arrive at by the end of the transfer window in that perspective. But right now, the chances of him leaving Newcastle to Liverpool are 4 out of 10 at the moment. It's not to say that they may not shift if circumstances change. They've been linked with multiple strikers, including Gonçalo Ramos, of course, Yohan Wissa. They are really, really interested, and a couple of other names. But again, Rando Kolomwani, he wants to return to Juventus, so it looks like it's not a plausible, a suggestion. Then you say, okay, what did I miss? Tesla says, did you know about Arne Slot before he came to Liverpool? I had heard of him, but because I do not watch the Dutch Eredivisie that much, it's not a name that I was, constantly following. For example, and the reason as to why I say that is because you remember when Arsenal were in the search for a manager, when we go back to 2019, when Unai Emery has been relieved of his duties, and it was, what's his name? The former Arsenal Sweden forward that was the interim, Freddie Ljungberg, with the Parmetti Sakas, trying to guide the team henceforth, and Arsenal are in search of a manager. I remember having on my shortlist, in my opinion, Eric Ten Hag, Diego Simeone, even though I knew that his style of play did not suit what ideally Arsenal would love to see in a manager. But for me, I did favor him. I think at the time, I wasn't really so much sold on Zidane, even though he had proven that he's a winner at Real Madrid. I wasn't really so sold on him. Tactically, Julian Nagelsmann is another name that we did, talk about. I think at the time he was still with RB Leipzig and he was doing good things over there. So, and then fast forward, when it came to the issue of Liverpool, I knew that Liverpool had spoken to Ruben Amorim. However, his insistence to play with the back three, Liverpool thought that it would not suit the kinds of players that they had within their squad. Of course, he went on to have conversations with West Ham. Then they were linked with there was another name that was on that shortlist before Anna Slot was brought in. So by the time they brought in Anna Slot, it was a name that I'd heard of, having guided Feyenoord to a league title about a year or two before. So the name had sort of come to the forefront, although not with much pronouncement, as Erik ten Hag when he had guided Ajax to, I think, the semi-finals of the UEFA Champions League of 2018-2019 season. You remember when they knocked out Real Madrid, that campaign. So yeah, I had heard of the name, but not. I didn't know so much about him, and in terms of his playing style and what his strengths were and things like that. So that's why I did say earlier on that he was a bit of a known quantity when he came in to fill the shoes of Jurgen Klopp. Majority of us thought he was, he was sort of going to sag his legs in those big shoes of Jurgen Klopp, but looks like he's fitted them as a glove. He says, sorry, can you repeat the answer for my previous comment? I was in. I want to read that last bit of the comments, but it's all good. Oh, my predictions for Liverpool players in terms of Salah play better than Frank Vitz and TK. Again, I do not think it's going to boil down to who plays better than the other. For now, Mohamed Salah remains the star of the team. Even when they've signed Hugo Ekitike, look at Hugo Ekitike, like the way they signed Darwin Núñez, they wanted to target, but Mo Salah is going to remain that player that they look onto to create chances, to score goals, especially on the quick, break or on the quick transition when they win the ball back. I do not think his deployment is going to shift from how they deployed him last season, where Anna Slot told him, look, yes, I understand we need to win the ball back, but you've got to reserve a bit of your energy and wait within the zones of the pitch for us to have a quick, a breakthrough. So I think for a player like Florian Wirtz, his role is going to be more to create for the Ekitikes and the Mo Salahs than for him to try and be a standout player that is scoring, so many goals and providing assists than just providing assists. However, again, the overall gist of it is going to revolve around how they all fit within the system, because so far they are positive sides. But if we go 5, 6, 10 games in the season and the formation is not clicking, then it could cause Anna Slot to shift gears or to change tactics. And by that I mean, if, for example, you're playing with a double pivot, let's say it's Curtis Jones alongside Dominic Szoboszlai, Ryan Gravenberch alongside McAllister, or Gravenberch alongside Szoboszlai, and then you're accommodating Hugo Ekitike as the target man, Cody Gakpo on one side and Mo Salah on the other, with Florian Wirtz ahead of them. If that system is not working, then he could look to revert to a midfield three that accommodates McAllister, Gravenberch, and Szoboszlai in one team. Then that means that he has to drop one of the other front four. So out of Ekitike, Florian Wirtz, Cody Gakpo, and Mo Salah, he would have to sacrifice one. And chances could be that it could be Cody Gakpo that becomes the first culprit if Hugo Ekitike gets himself quickly firing and is scoring the goals. However, if Hugo Ekitike does not, pick up quickly, then Cody Gakpo will take that place, and we'll have Florian Wirtz playing as, the post 9 kind of role. And then, of course, Mohamed Salah is a mainstay in the team. So I do expect Mohamed Salah to remain the star of the team at the moment, and that's why part of my reservation of them pursuing Alexander Isak is about having one too many stars within the same team. That maybe it could, shift a bit of how they go about the overall game. sometimes these things happen when you have too many stars. There's a bit of selfishness when it comes to the final third, and instead of making the player wants to try and score by themselves because they want to hit certain numbers and also be also a star of the team, and that kind of sense. That's what I do feel about that. Then Tester says, do you think Arsenal could have won the Premier League if they had put a manager like Massimiliano Allegri? Thanks for the reminder. Again, Massimiliano Allegri was one of those names that we did discuss at the time. I remember those days we were discussing the possibilities. He's a manager that I did appreciate given what he had done at Juventus. Of course, coming through the ranks, I think at Palmo, was it Palmo or Palmo? And then I think Palmo, and then AC Milan in his first spell, and things like that. So I looked at him. He's a very, very competitive manager. In my opinion, at the time, I thought we needed a manager that has that winning mentality, that is a workaholic, that is sort of proven, because I thought this kind of squad that we had at the time, I needed a manager that players could listen to, that gave lots of respect because of his track record. I remember part of me pondered Antonio Conte, although the majority of the reports they were saying Antonio Conte is a bit too chaotic. And again, we know he's a bit chaotic because sometimes he's falling out with certain players. He's so bad. But that notwithstanding, he was a name that we did discuss at the time. So really, I don't know if we would have won the Premier League title, because I do not know what kind of trajectory we would have gone on. I do not know if you would have wanted to be an instant fix as opposed to building a whole different project, because in Arsenal choosing Mikel Arteta, they knew they had to sort of rebuild from the ground up. Now, again, it takes me back to the options that we were looking at. I did not differ much when Unai Emery left. Announced that he would be leaving the club at the end of the season. Those are the same names that we're still speaking about: Julian Nagelsmann, Massimiliano Allegri, Antonio Conte, those kinds of names. Those are some of the names we're discussing. Of course, we knew that Pep Guardiola was not going to leave Man City for Arsenal. Jurgen Klopp was not going to make the switch. Those were ideal names that any club would have loved to have. So, and Unai Emery is not a name that we had discussed, but as we sort of entered in the summer, his name started coming in the frame. But Mikel Arteta was equally interviewed at that time. Now, when Mikel Arteta was interviewed, that was before Raul Sanllehi came in. Now, when Raul Sanllehi comes in, he changes and he says, we will get Unai Emery. And of course, he did impress his bosses with, the review of the team, the video analysis and things like that, the review of the players and analysis of the players, and he won that race. So, and I thought, as soon as he was appointed, I looked at him as a quick fix, to try and get Arsenal quickly back up, beyond where Arsene Wenger had left it. And it appeared to work in that debut campaign. That was 18-19. And we reached the finals of the UEFA Europa League. We fell short by a couple of games, by a couple of results. I think it was actually by 1 point or 2 when we failed to, I think it was by about 2 points. Oh, bless. When we failed to qualify for the UEFA Champions League slot and finished 5th. And then the subsequent season, things went south for him, really. Because in his debut campaign, there's a time we went, I think, on a 22-game unbeaten run, and everything looked good and positive. However, things turned sour quickly. Apparently, there were divisions in the dressing room, players not understanding his tactics and instructions, and things like that. He was the first manager that tried to get our goalkeepers to play from out the back, and Peter Cech was struggling with a bit of that. He was the traditional goalkeeper of, kick the ball high up the pitch and that kind of thing. So, in retrospect, when I look back at Massimiliano Allegri, I cannot tell you that we would have won a Premier League title because I do not know what the strategy would have been for him. would it have been a similar approach to Mikel Arteta to say we are going to build this team, or would it have been looked at as a quick fix? Given that he was a proven winner at the time, I think they would have looked at him as a quick fix. The way Manchester United brought in Jose Mourinho after Luis van Gaal left. Now remember, Luis van Gaal was trying to build. When David Moyes came in, of course there were so many expectations, and the senior players, the Rio Ferdinand, I think Paul Scholes, Ryan Giggs, they did not respect him that much. They did not respect him that much, and that's why he failed David Moyes at Manchester United. For me, that was part of the reason. They did not believe in his signings. I remember one time they were speaking about him signing Marouane Fellaini, and they thought he was not Manchester United quality or caliber and things like that. So once he failed in his debut campaign and Ryan Giggs took over as an interim, and then they brought in Luis van Gaal, and he managed them, I think, between 2014, that was 2014, 2015, and 2015, 2016, for those 2 seasons. So he was trying to build that young team of Marcus Rashford. He brought Marcus Rashford to the forefront. You remember, I think his first game was against Midtjylland in the UEFA Europa League. He brought in Anthony Martial. He brought in Daley Blind, Marcos Rojo. That's the time when they signed, of course, Angel Di Maria, I think Radamel Falcao, Edson Cavani, So he was trying to build, a new team for Man United. And part of Chris Smalling was still part of that team. David De Gea was still part of that team. And part of the criticism is because Man United played so many back passes. There were so many back passes between Phil Jones, Chris Smalling, and David De Gea. Of course, sometimes it looked boring. But at the end of the day, he was trying to build. Now, when they sacked him at the end of in 2016, after winning them the FA Cup final, when they beat Crystal Palace in the finals by 2-1, I think Joan Manuel Mata and Jesse Lingard scored in that final, while Jason Panchon scored for Crystal Palace. They brought in Jose Mourinho, and Jose Mourinho was brought in as a quick fixer to get Manchester United to the winning side that they were. When Sir Alex Ferguson was still there, because Mourinho was a proven winner. And he did win them, the Cup double, the Carabao Cup, and the Europa League when they beat Ajax in the final by 2-0. So in that kind of mold, that's how I think Arsenal would have looked at Maximiliano Allegri, like the way Man United had appointed Jose Mourinho. And yet, indeed, what we needed was a build. When you go back and revisit our overall squad, you knew that some players were below average. Us signing Socrates Pastatopoulos, you remember we signed Stefan Lucksteiner from Juventus as a free agent. I mean, we were all over the place. We had Sid Kolasinac, no offense, he wasn't that bad a player. He was signed by Arsene Wenger from Schalke 04, and at the time he was one of the best left backs in Europe, but it wasn't working out so much. So we just did not have a squad that was good enough. At the end of the day, we had lost Alexis Sanchez to Manchester United and brought in Mkhitaryan and things like that. So I do not believe that with that squad he would have won us the Premier League title. If he was going to build, to try and build and convince the team to take, the approach that Mikel Arteta has taken in terms of building. Again, I do not have any record to prove that he would have won us. That. You say I'm off now. You must enjoy the rest of your evening. Tribe and everyone else watching, thanks for another good stream. I will be back tomorrow. Thank you so much, Atestas, for always being part of this conversation and for engaging us for the beautiful, discussions. You always engage us in, a larger debate. So thank you for all your questions. Anyways, let's move away and discuss Crystal Palace, because Crystal Palace did lose their appeal in the Court of Arbitration Sport. I remember UEFA did penalize them for being found in violation of the club ownership regulations, because their then shareholder John Textor was also a shareholder or an owner in Olympic Lyon, and Olympic Lyon were destined to play in the same competition with Crystal Palace in the UEFA Europa League. Now, regardless of what Crystal Palace's arguments were, UEFA decided to say to penalize them by already getting them to the UEFA Conference League, while they pushed Nottingham Forest was supposed to play in the Conference League to the UEFA Europa League, and that's the decision that the Court of Arbitration Sport did, uphold. And it's a bit of a fair rule, sort of law, especially when you have a shareholder who is not involved whatsoever in the day-to-day running of the club. And even then, John Textor had already wanted to sell his shares, but also he has sold his shares, so it's not going to be a non-factor. But then you also have clubs that are under the same umbrella ownership, and then they sort of get a leeway. We had Girona and Manchester City in the UEFA Champions League, and yet they are under the same ownership group. We had RB Leipzig and Red Bull Salzburg, I think at some point in the UEFA Europa League, and they are under the same ownership, and that did not affect them. So why is the case being so unique for Crystal Palace? But it is what it is. Crystal Palace will have to, bury their heads in the sand, because part of that was their administrative errors, although they couldn't have figured that they would qualify for the Europa League. They were always in the bottom half of the table, sorry, on the second page of the table. So it's not like they were going to finish 8th or 7th, that it would give them a chance to, even be in Europe in the first place. When it comes to the FA Cup, the FA Cup, they had never won a major trophy in their lifetime. And suddenly they won. And while the players deserve all the credit and they deserve to be playing at the second tier of European football, they're being relegated because of an administrative issue. So the rules in themselves, as good as they are, they're a bit overly ambiguous, because I think John Textor was more like a minority or a silent partner in this, a business with Crystal Palace. But it is what it is. They've been penalized for that, and there's no changing that. So they'll have to live with that decision. Then Atletico de Madrid did confirm the signing of Giacomo Raspadori from Napoli for about 26 million euros. That deal is done. Then Gianluigi Donnarumma has been excluded in PSG's squad for the UEFA Super Cup. I remember on Wednesday they're going to be up against Tottenham Hotspur in the UEFA Super Cup. That's the UEFA Champions League winner versus the UEFA Europa League winner, and that game is coming on Wednesday, so he's been excluded from that. Now, the expectation is that he will leave this summer or as a free agent next summer when his contract does run out. He won't be signing a new contract with PSG. It's a World Cup here. Why sit down? And just because you're on high wages. Like I said, guys, if I'm Chelsea, if I'm Man United, I'm definitely exploring this deal, especially if what is being reported is true, that it could be available for a mere 26 million pounds for a goalkeeper that is only 26 years of age. You do secure yourself a goalkeeper for the next, 6 to 8 years at the bare minimum, because that's a young player. So you have until the age of 30, that's 4 years that you're going to milk out of him. Then another 4 years by the time he gets to 34, and that's good, So, anyways, we will wait to see how things do. It's not when it comes to Gianluigi Donnarumma. So, but we'll see where he will end up. Then Manchester United are planning for talks for Carlos Baleba, because they think the player is very open to joining them. So they will continue to explore that deal and see if it can be possibly done. Then Ilya Zabanya has completed his medicals ahead of joining PSG as a new PSG player. While Benjamin Sesko, it's been formally announced he will be donning the shirt number 30 at Manchester United. Then quickly, FTBL says, "You Nigerian?" No, I'm not Nigerian. I'm Ugandan, but thanks for asking. I'm from Kampala, Uganda, small country in the eastern part of the continent, in Eastern Africa. So small landlocked country. That's where I'm from. But thank you for asking. FTBL edits there. Then quickly, let's run through the latest from the gossip transfer speculation and things like that. But guys, like I said, I did put out my season and next season predictions for the Premier League. Go to the to the channel, check out under the video section and watch that video. It's about 45 minutes. Do watch it and give me leave me your thoughts down in the comment section in regards to what your expectations are when it comes to those predictions for the 2025-2026 Premier League season. I've given those predictions on how I do expect the Premier League table to have its outlook by the end of the season. Who will win the Premier League title? Who do I expect to be relegated? Who will finish within the top 4? Who will finish within the top 6 and to qualify for those European slots? Where will Manchester United finish? Where will Tottenham Hotspur finish? Will Nottingham Forest finish as high as 7 that they did last season? Or are they going to go? Brighton and Hove Albion, they finished 8th last season and they will replicate that. Bournemouth, they finished 9 on the Premier League top last season. Can they replicate that? Can Brentford finish as high as, was it 10th? And those kinds of discussions. So just go watch the video and let me know what your thoughts were on that particular video, what you're looking out for. Anyways, quickly in regards to the latest from the transfer gossip and rumor mill, it says, okay, I do have a comment to read before we get into the gossip. So this is it IMAX? Is it IMAX? IMAX Paris 20 says hi. Hi IMAX, good to have you on the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel if you're new here and help me grow 2,000 subscribers. That's the mission at the moment. But guys, quickly, this is the latest from the world of transfer speculation and gossip as compiled by BBC Sport. We've spoken about Manchester City's interest in Rodrygo. Valuation is expected to be about £87 million. Nottingham Forest, we've spoken about their interest in James McAtee and how far they are with that deal, while Chelsea and RB Leipzig have discussed French forward Christopher Nkunku, 27 years of age, doing talks to sign Xavi Simons. That's according to TalkSport. Monaco are interested in signing Newcastle's 34-year-old England defender Kieran Trippier. That was reviewed by Sky Sport. While West Ham are preparing a bid for Southampton's 21-year-old Portugal under-21 midfielder Mateus Fernandes, who is valued at about £30 million. That's according to The Guardian. As Swedish striker Alexander Isak will only consider reintegrating at Newcastle or signing a new deal if Liverpool directly inform him a deal is impossible this summer. That's according to BBC Sport. Inter Milan, Roma, Juventus, and Napoli have joined AC Milan in expressing interest in Rasmus Højlund, with Manchester United ready to consider bids of £30 to £40 million for the 22-year-old Denmark striker. That's according to the eye. Then England midfielder Jack Grealish loan move to Manchester City includes a £50 million buy option for the 29-year-old next summer. For me, I think that's an overvaluation of his, of the player who will be turning 30, really not so far from now. Then Chelsea have launched a £43 million offer for 26-year-old Liverpool and French centre-back Ibrahim Konate, according to Defensa Central in Spain, while Brentford and Newcastle are in talks to sign Stade French striker and Arnaud Kali Muendo there, with the Bees slightly more advanced in negotiations for the 23-year-old. Remember, Brentford have told Johan Wissa that they will only let him leave if they do secure a replacement first. The Newcastle have also have strong interest in Leicester City and Moroccan attacking midfielder Bilal El Kanous at 21 years of age, but first competition from Leeds. That's according to the Telegraph. Bilal El Kanous was a name that was so prominent at the very tail end of the window in regards to players that were linked to the potential move away from Leicester City, with teams like Arsenal being linked with the potential move for him. However, in recent reports have suggested that Arsenal could make a move for Olympic Lyon's Malik Fofana. So let's wait and see. Then Dominic Calvert-Lewin has asked his agent as he attempts to find a new club. Dominic Calvert-Lewin has sacked his agent as he attempts to find a new club. The Old England striker has held talks with Manchester United, Newcastle, and Leeds, according to TalkSport, while Wolfsburg are interested in Sunderland 23-year-old Northern Ireland fullback Taria Hume. That's according to Sky Sports, while Chelsea are considering making a move for Bayer Leverkusen and Ecuador defender Piero Hincapie. 23 following 22-year-old England centre-back Levi Colwill's serious knee injury. That's according to Court of Arbitration Sport. How would Bayer Leverkusen let go of another defender? They already lost Jonathan Tah. They already lost, Jeremy Frimpong. They lost the key midfielder in Granit Xhaka. The German midfielder Ilkay Gundogan is keen on staying at Manchester City beyond the end of the summer transfer window, despite interest from Galatasaray. That's according to Football Insider. Otherwise, guys, it's been a pleasure doing this with you. Thank you so much. Is it IMAX or Airmax? IMAX Paris. Thank you so much. FTBL Edits. Thank you so much. Testers of Life. It's been a pleasure. Pedri, always a pleasure to see you around and engage with you. Rodrygo the Court, Riyadh, Will Flemingwista. There, it was a pleasure having you on the broadcast. For those of you that are just joining us, like the broadcast, consider subscribing to the channel, and please help me to 2,000 subscribers. That's the objective. That's the mission at the moment. And thank you so much for those that have recently subscribed. I do not take your love and support for granted. To the people that do watch our content, especially these live broadcasts, long after they've ended, we do not take your time for granted. It's always a pleasure. Have yourselves a wonderful rest of the night. Let's meet tomorrow morning for the Tuesday morning broadcast. Bye-bye for now.